Hi, welcome back, everybody. I am Chet Nichols, IFBB Pro, MPC Judge, and this is my wife, Natalie Nichols, who is also an IFBB Pro and MPC Judge as well. And we're starting off a new series today, and we have the one and only Dr. Joe Klemczewski, who happens to be our mentor for our business and as a coach to us. As far as competing next year. We can't wait for that to start happening. And also a very good friend of ours. So we are thrilled to have him today. So how you doing, Joe?
Always good to spend time with you guys. I love it every time I see a message come through.
Sounds great, man. Always enjoy the conversations we have and learn something every time. For people who are not familiar with who you are, which can't be a lot of them out there, but why don't you give us a little bit of background about your career as a bodybuilder and an entrepreneur and all those type of things you've done.
Yeah. So I was your typical little kid, probably growing up in the 70s and 80s. And, back then without internet and cable TV and all that, you had to actually do stuff. And so I got involved in athletics, and that led to weightlifting. So by the time I was 12, 13 years old, I was already hitting it pretty hard. I was really motivated as a baseball player, wanted to be in the big leagues. And one of my old school coaches said, you gotta get stronger. So lift weights. I was a pretty small framed guy. And so really throughout my high school career, I really kind of fulfilled some of my genetic potential. So by the time I left high school sports and went off into college and actually the military, I just kept lifting weights and had always been swept up in kind of the soap opera of the sport, getting the magazines, watching Mr. Olympia stuff, just tracking that like any other sport enthusiast. And so ended up, I thought I was just going to be a physical therapist my whole life. That was my goal. I transitioned from business and marketing into physical therapy, did that for a couple of years. And then I was so consumed with my own career as a bodybuilder that I continued on and got a doctorate in nutrition, which led me to writing for a lot of the early fitness magazines, some of the, Iron Man, Muscle and Fitness, all that. And that created a lot of speaking platform engagements. And so, there was this time before social media where, that's where you would find me in magazines or speaking at camps and conferences. And now that we've kind of created this into an entire coaching industry, there are a lot of people out there on different platforms and even different generations that, like you said, there are certainly some people who don't know where it all began, and it's just fun to be out here in the mix.
Yeah. I mean, your experience, it's tremendous what you've done over the years. And let's talk a little bit about the coaching aspect of it. I mean, almost 500 pros you've worked with, a couple Olympians. I mean, you've just done it all from a bodybuilder standpoint and also as a coach. Is that right?
Yeah, there was about 15 years there, starting around 1998, 2000, where through some of my writing in one of the fitness magazines, I just thought, I bet people would like this. I help a lot of friends, and there's a lot of misinformation. So I created this little ad for a magazine to be a contest prep coach. Had no idea what would happen. And all of a sudden people started hiring me. And since nobody was doing it back then, and I was lucky in terms of having the right education, I was already a WNBF pro myself. So I have some experience. Once that tidal wave started, then there was a 10 or 15 year head start where nobody else was doing this. And so I could walk into any show with 15, 20, 30 clients and just sweep every single category, every division, every pro card. So it was kind of like Babe Ruth numbers. You almost need an asterisk, 500 pro cards, 150 pro titles, asterisk. I was the first coach, and no one else was doing anything yet.
Well, that's just awesome.
What I'm hearing here is that you could go and sweep shows because your clients were prepared.
Absolutely.
That is really a good lead into what
Imagine
we're
that.
about. Yeah, actually,
Absolutely.
Really good lead into what we're going to talk about. Because actually today we want to talk about the off season and maybe like the top 5 or 6 mistakes a lot of people make in the off season. How's that sound to you?
Great. I love it.
So you want to start off because you had a really good one to go.
Yeah, I think just for me as a coach, one of the worst things that I see people doing is going it alone for their off season, and they're building something They're not exactly sure what yet, but they're in the gym doing everything that they see everybody else doing, following someone else's plan they found on Instagram or something usually. And then when they think they're ready, they hire a prep coach. They've already got the show picked out, and now we're ready to peel it all off. And they think they're going to do very well. And then it's probably the coach's fault if they don't. But I'm at the judging table telling them that they need to build here and here and here, all these places that are crucial to the division that they signed up in. And the root cause of the problem is they did not lay the groundwork.
Correct.
They didn't do it in the right order. So
what's your thoughts on that?
I have two stories that come to mind. First of all, when I won my pro card, I took a 2-year off season, gained as much as I possibly could. Really went through a powerlifting kind of Mike Menser heavy duty phase. Let my body weight come up more than it had in the past. And then I took an entire 11 months to diet slowly down. And so I did. I controlled that off season and of course won my pro card. And I will say, you know, there was that time I was talking about when I was coaching so many people. I never had fewer than 250 or 300 clients at a time. And that was just the mass action of that era. Well, now I intentionally, because I work so much more helping coaches with their businesses, I only keep about 40 or 50 clients on my own personal coaching, logs here. And most of them stay with me all year long. Like you said, Natalie, that we love the off season. You know, that's the time to really dig in, build, control body composition in the right way. And when you have the time that I think is really the fun part, the building, it's really a tremendous advantage to have collaboration like that.
Yeah, I think that people kind of lose sight of the actual name of this sport, bodybuilding, and the bodybuilding is done in the off season.
Correct.
And if you take that part out of the equation, you're just up there dieting. You're just losing weight and revealing whatever shape you already had. So,
yeah, I agree.
Take the time to properly build that body to compete in a bodybuilding competition. It's kind of simple.
That kind of goes into my next point. When you don't really have the guidance of a good coach in the off season, you may spend a lot of time doing things you don't necessarily need to do and not enough time to do the things. Like I see it time and time again, anywhere from bodybuilders down to bikini competitors, they're really not doing a lot of compound movements, the big lifts, the things that actually build the muscle, build the base in the off season, and then wonder why when they're ready to go prep that, your base still isn't there. Well, I've been working on it for a year. Well, what have you been doing? High reps, accessory work, isolation work. What about, pull-ups, rack pulls, deadlift, squats? No, I haven't been doing a lot of those. Well, that's the problem right there. You're not doing the right things to build your base properly.
And you mentioned, I've been doing it for a year.
Exactly. Yes.
Bodybuilding is a sport measured in decades, and
it's a patient person sport.
And that's one of the another thing that I would call a big mistake is just competing too often. And this may make promoters a little nervous when they hear coaches talking about this, but I never had more than a 2-year off season. I mean, I would always have 2-year off seasons because by the time you're dieting for a show, barely recovering, maybe have a couple months off season, you're dieting again if you're going to continue to do that. And there's a time and a place for that. If you've had an extended off season and you're ready to compete and rack up Olympia points or go for those wins, that's totally fine. Extend that contest season. But when it's off season, and you got to spend the time in a calorie surplus or at least and build.
Yeah. And what you were talking about when you have specific goals, and though you might be deviating from what you would ordinarily advise people to do. So then you're competing a little bit more often because those competitions are getting you further to your next goal, not just for the sake of doing it, because then that is taking you further into a metabolic hole and it's eating away at some muscle, just different things that are kind of a negative to your physique. You have to think strategically about it if you have goals in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, well, one part you just mentioned that brings me into my next one would be you don't spend enough time trying to build those calories up either. And you got to do it in an appropriate way. You don't want to just go in there and start eating 1,000 more calories than you normally do. You're going to put a lot of body fat on. But you need to do it in a manner that you're accepting an appropriate amount of weight gain per week or month or whatever, an established goal, while increasing those calories further. Because if you don't, when you do start prep, you're already in a hole, and you're going to peter out at the end. You're not going to have enough calories to pull down from. So that's another big mistake, is not getting those calories up, your metabolism upregulated enough to give a effective and efficient prep.
Right. And that's one of those things where you said it's a tightrope to walk, because there are some off seasons where you don't have the time to gain a lot of body fat. And it's I'm going to use the word strategic that Natalie just threw out there, in that I think there are times of your life where you have to have an extended off season, gain a little bit more weight than maybe you're comfortable with, power lift, and really keep your body under that level of tension. It's not necessary all the time. You don't want to gain and have to lose the same 30, 40, 50 pounds every year or two. I mean, save that for those extended off seasons, and then stay just north of your metabolic set point, so that you can gain all the advantage of the extra food without the body fat. There's kind of a sweet spot. I would even ask you guys, if this is the top weight you've ever been at versus your contest weight, I would bet your strongest and best lifting is not always at your top heaviest weight. It's somewhere in the middle.
You're a little sluggish up there.
Yes.
Absolutely. Because, when I get up to about 215 plus, I mean, metabolism soaring, because, I mean, I'm not gaining weight, but I'm sluggish in the gym.
He's
I feel
snoring really bad. Seriously, you notice a difference.
It's true.
All of a sudden he's way up here in the octaves when he's snoring, and it's like an entirely different person.
Yeah. And the performance in the gym, the energy's not there. I mean, I'm trying, but just not sleeping well. There's all these type of things that go on. It's almost similar to the stages of prep when I'm not getting hardly any food. The difference is I'm getting a lot more food, but the physical feelings are very similar in a way, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, I actually want to go back to something that I had a little brain fart there. Joe, you were talking about when you may take 2 years off between shows because you need to recover after your last show. And for females, that's going to take a little bit longer, especially if their hormones really got messed up, and they forget about that. They just want to get off the stage, have a little bit of off season so they can eat a little bit of food and then get right back on the stage. And they're not allowing their body time to recover, and they don't understand why their hair is falling out, and they have zero sex drive. And now my relationship is suffering. He doesn't support me on the stage. Well, let your body and your relationship heal.
Good point.
You gotta manage that stuff for sure. There are a lot of things that people think, oh, this just comes with the territory. It's the price you pay, and it's not. I mean, you can back up, assess a little bit, be smart, make sure you're taking care of your health.
Joe, I want to leave the last one with you. So what would be something we haven't talked about yet? What would be the number one mistake that you think people make in the off season?
Well, out of everything that we've covered so far, the only thing I would add is to treat the training like it's your job. The architecture of your progressions and your programming, that's what I loved most. I mean, I still have a binder this thick of my entire contest history, and what fills most of that are my workouts, because I would have plans. If I had a 6-month or 12-month off season, I had an exact plan of what I was going to work on. I've worked with some of the coaches from the U.S. strongman team, worked with world record holding power lifters, because if this is going to be my job, I want to make sure I'm performing every single day in a way that gets me that goal. It's not just about contest day. Contest days are the 364 days before that day.
Correct.
So I think that the training and how you manage that and how you design it is absolutely critical.
You said you had one more thing?
Yeah. So one more big thing that I see people doing is they're spending, if you convince them to take an off season, they're working on what they think the feedback that the judges gave them at their last show was. So for instance, we have people that I see this especially with bikini ladies. If they were told that they were too hard, a lot of times they interpret that as only meaning you have too much muscle. So then I'm going to spend an entire off season trying to bring down my muscularity, when it may have been that you just got too lean, or maybe your delts were too big, and that's the way that judge phrased it to you. So make sure that you clarify exactly what they meant by whatever phrase that they that they said to you, and in your excitement and the adrenaline and everything after the show, you're just nodding, going, uh-huh, and then thank you, and you walk away from the table, but you really don't know. And that's your time to find out exactly what you need to do to bring the feedback, or bring the physique that is going to get you positive feedback. It's going to get you placing where you want to be. Conditioning is another one. Work on your conditioning. Sometimes that could just mean that you didn't practice your posing well enough, so you're sitting there shaking the whole time. You didn't have the stamina, but a judge is going to say, work on your conditioning.
Yeah, so the bottom line is just make sure you get the clarification. Don't just walk away when they give you the first lines and whatnot. Pull them a little bit. They'll go into detail for you, or at least they should.
Absolutely. And use a wide array of feedback. I mean, just that's
Absolutely.
one person. Ask other people who are there, show pictures to friends and ask, because you want to make sure it's as objective as possible, not just one person's opinion.
Yes. And actually that brings a really good point, because if the judge that you got feedback from was on this side of the table, they may see that you had a blocky waist. Down here at this end, if you had asked that judge for feedback, probably wouldn't have noticed you had a blocky waist at all. So get a variety of judges' opinions if you can.
All right. Good stuff, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to follow us up next week and hit subscribe, because this is the first video of a series we're going to be doing with Dr. Joe.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.